Trump's whole tariff policy is a huge mistake, in my opinion, as a Democrat. Number one, tariffs are charged. Some Republicans are correct. The tariffs are charged at the border and to the importer. But any smart company who imports products from other nations, they will pass that tariff down to the consumer. What does that do? That raises the price of those goods to the consumer. Now, even if it doesn't raise prices to the consumer and the company takes that in, bites the bullet, shrinks their margins. What tariffs also do is it serves as a signal to other companies, other competitors, that they too can raise their prices. So there's a huge risk with what Trump is doing. Trump is gambling with the United States economy right now. And I do not understand how people could vote for this gamble and vote for a person like Donald Trump. The tariffs that he's imposing are so sweeping. Most of the time, they're not targeted. It is a reckless, it's like throwing a bomb on a city of civilians hoping to catch one bad guy. It's just a sweeping way of trying to get his greedy hands to make money. Now, he thinks he's going to make money for the country. But he doesn't realize, Trump is so stupid, he doesn't realize that by raising tariffs to such a high amount like he proposed, that will actually cause no imports, and therefore you will collect no tariffs. What an idiot. Oh, that board he brought out that day. Remember the other day? He brought out a board with all the tariffs that countries supposedly are charging the United States. That was a lie. Trump lied about the tariffs imposed by other countries on the United States. What he did is some weird, stupid math, incorporating exchange rates, which are oftentimes out of control of governments. Trump also lied that tariffs are not a tax against its citizens. They are indeed a consumption tax towards its own citizens, if the company that imports passes it on to the consumers and if the consumers buy it. That's just science. So for the people who voted for Trump, what you voted for is a liar. He lied about the tariffs and the consumption tax. He's manipulating numbers and figures to suit his own purpose. He caused the stock market to drop, 10, 15% in a matter of days. He's causing uncertainty in the markets. Republicans, I hope you're happy with what you voted for. You're starting to realize the pain and suffering that a crazy man like Trump can cause. I believe that it is in society's best interest for healthcare to be universal. The United States already has a system of Medicare, Medicaid, where the really poor or the really old get basically a type of universal healthcare already. And I think the outcome of expanding that to everyone would benefit society, both economically and morally, health-wise, of course. And if you look at the other civilized nations of the world, of course, they have healthcare and universal healthcare. Most of them do. And their cost per person is way lower than the United States. The United States, the system of healthcare is based on profit, not based on basically helping people and caring for them. And so I think that if you're a person who votes within the United States, this is a big issue for you. And I think you don't have to be emotional about it. You can be reasonable and say it just benefits everyone if we have universal health care. If you look at the actual violence that's committed in this country, most of it, not all, but most of it's come from the right. The Republicans need to own up that they're creating a situation through misinformation, through propaganda. They're leading a lot of people, some of them emotionally unstable, to cause extreme violence in society. And nowhere, the best example of this in recent history is January 6th. Here we have a situation of propaganda, misinformation coming from a politician that has led thousands and thousands of young men, mostly white, to cause heinous destruction and violence. This needs to stop. The rhetoric that Trump has used in the past, 6 months or so, of saying that they want the United States should have Canada as its 51st state, is wrong on so many levels. The first level is that he is proposing something that is practically near impossible to do, unless, of course, you're talking about invasion. Now, as a Democrat, I don't think Trump would actually use the military to invade Canada and force it to make the 51st state. But if he is serious about that, to use the military, well, that I don't need to expound upon. That is just evil. But on another idea of Trump using this rhetoric to get better trade deals, this is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. Why in the world would you antagonize a partner that we've had for decades to cause this negative resentment and negative emotion towards the United States? There's no reason to do this. There are ways to achieve your goals. Now, I'm a Democrat, but as I can see, like the Republicans, they could use other means to achieve their goals than actually just to offend people, a sovereign nation. To actually kid around and say that a Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, to call him a governor. This is not presidential rhetoric. This is only harmful. And I think if you're a Republican listening, you can realize this, that it does not help the situation. Sure, it might be funny to some Republicans out there and say, yeah, we're tough, we're the best. But there are real people in Canada who are frightened with this tariff situation, with this 51st state talk. Trump was actually interviewed by Laura Ingraham on Fox News and said that to negotiate with the Canadians is worse than to negotiate with the Russians or the Chinese. Like, think about that. One thing that the United States values, I think, as a people, is sovereignty. That the people can vote in a government, and within their country, they can make sovereign choices within that country. And we as American people should support that in other countries, because we support it in our own. What Russia has done is they have unilaterally walked into a sovereign nation and say, no, this is ours. We would not want that to happen to our country. Why would we want this to happen to the Ukraine? Now, a lot of Republicans will say things like, well, who cares? I mean, what's in it for us? There's a ton of things in it for us. From trading to energy to the whole economic system in Europe. There are practical reasons to support Ukraine and do everything in our power to stop Putin. Now, sometimes that means long, prolonged war. But if you care about defending freedom, defending a sovereign nation's right to exist, then this is a battle worth fighting. It is completely harmful rhetoric to threaten, to imply at least, that we can take over Greenland for military purposes. And the people of Greenland have voted on this, and the majority don't want to be part of the United States, and we need to respect that. There are people out there with a real illness. This illness is called dysphoria. And I know a lot of Republicans just feel very icky about this topic. They have a knee-jerk aversion to people who are different than them. But part of the strength of America is accepting people's differences. And some people have this experience, that an internal experience of one gender different than what they were born with. Now, as a Democrat, I get the Republican narrative You can't prove it scientifically or whatever, but there is some evidence that during development, certain parts of the brain, different sizes, that there is some scientific evidence that people can have more femininity or masculinity compared to the average stereotypes. So now if a person who was born male identifies as a woman and for most of their life have identified this way and people see them this way, then why in the world would you not let them compete in women's sports? There is no evidence that trans women outperform biological women, females. There's no evidence of that. And this whole rhetoric that they're winning so much, and yes, there's examples of trans women winning sports, but for the most part, it's such a small percentage. The reason why Republicans are doing this is they're using this as a wedge issue. They're using this as an emotional trigger to divert from other issues. And to their credit, the Republicans have had success in this. But at what cost? The cost is they're hurting real people in a real way. As a Democrat, their society that we currently have in the United States is a mixture between capitalism and socialism. And if we care, if we value that people ought to have things like food, shelter, and clothing, and we have some people who have a disproportionate amount of wealth, where so much wealth is concentrated in the hands of so few, there are tons of problems with that. Number one, the political power they can exert on governments is extreme. Number two, that wealth can be transferred for the benefit of all society. It will even benefit billionaires, for billionaires to give up more of their money through taxation to those in need. How, you might ask, if you're a Republican asking? Think about it. Don't you, as a billionaire, want to live in a society where more people are walking around fully clothed, they feel stable and content in their own homes? They don't feel the need to steal? So if you look back into the 1950s and the 1960s, the tax rate for billionaires, on earned income at least, was very high, 70, 80%. And it did not hurt the economy. In fact, the economy did quite well in that era. Now you can say it's because of coming out of World War II, but the fact remains it did not hurt the economy. I say, and I agree with Bernie Sanders here, that there shouldn't be billionaires. We should tax them to the amount where we can transfer their wealth to people who are more needy to fix all those problems I referred to earlier and have a more stable, productive, growing economy. It is immoral for billionaires to exist. It is dangerous for billionaires to exist. So many Republicans do not trust the experts. They'll go with their gut, their intuition. This is a dangerous position to hold. The reason for this is our intuitions are often misleading. They're often wrong. And if our society keeps going in this way, where we don't trust the experts, the specialists in their field, I think we as a society are doomed. Where if you start to question and doubt everything that people who are engaged in their field on a daily basis, if we question and doubt them, or we treat their opinion on the same level as someone else, just who's a plumber, what are we doing? Here's an example. There are people who talk about the Palestinian-Israeli war and have no clue what's going on. They will defend Israel to the hilt, just blindly, not realizing the facts on the ground of the atrocities the Israelis have committed, where experts agree that A, B, and C has been done, But because of this knee-jerk reaction, maybe they're evangelical Christian and think of end times. They have this, at no matter what, we support Israel. This has to stop. We have to start listening to the experts, the historians who do this for a living, to parse out and nuance out the real issues that's going on and the tragedies that have occurred. I think history has shown that if given a chance to cheat, corporations will cheat. Corporations will take advantage of their workers to increase their bottom line. There are many examples of where if I can hire a person for $10 an hour or $5 an hour, I'm going to choose the 5. This is the problem with a capitalistic society. The problem is it's a race to the bottom. And then when you have a situation like this, where workers have no power, then you end up having wages far below what it takes and requires to live, to own a home, to start a family, to have that white picket fence experience. Now, I understand the Republicans in that they don't want forced unions, and I am actually sympathetic to that. But I think most reasonable people would agree that if the workers who actually are doing the work, who are actually the ones creating the value, if they are not being compensated fairly, if they're being mistreated, then those corporations ought to be punished by the government, that there should be laws made. And this is why, as a Democrat, I support more unions. And unions should be honest and build trust within the working community and not take advantage of the workers themselves. But if they do it properly, unions can actually lead to the middle class growing stronger, that people can now maybe even have single income homes and one parent can stay home and raise their kids. Let me appeal to the Republicans listening. We need more unions. We need more workers' rights so we can get back to the Leave It to Beaver days. Wouldn't that be great? Where if a woman wanted, I'm speaking as a Democrat, I'm speaking to Republicans now, I'm appealing to them. Wouldn't it be great if we had unions that could raise the wages so that mother can stay at home and raise her own children? Energy, mostly the form of oil, is probably one of the most important things in American society. It's still, unfortunately, still is what powers most of the things we use in this country. And because of its importance, this is why it should be nationalized. Now, would you want an aircraft carrier, a tank, a Tomahawk cruise missile to be put in the hands of a private industry? Of course not. In the same way, oil can be weaponized against countries and our own country. And for national security reasons, I believe as a Democrat, there should be no Shell oil. There should not be Exxon. That the government should be in control of all oil production. And in a way, they already are, because they control the leases on government land, where a lot of in oceans, where a lot of drilling takes place. So we're not that far from it. So if you're a Republican listening, you should support people like me, a Democrat, who believe you should nationalize the oil industry. One of Trump's most stupid choices was to nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Secretary of Health. Here we got a guy who is, let's be honest, he's an anti-vaxxer. He claims he isn't. But everything in his actions, what he does, says otherwise. He causes people to doubt the efficacy of vaccines that have worked for decades. Now, what does this mean? This means that some people will listen to a guy and say, well, maybe he's right. Maybe vaccines do cause autism. Maybe I won't vaccinate my child. And then that child dies of some disease. We cannot play around with stuff like this. We cannot play around with human health and the what ifs. We need to listen to the experts and not get this guy coming in who has no business talking about what he's talking about. And let me say before I go, that one of Trump's most dangerous things he ever did was to stand up and seriously say that we need to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from their homeland. He said this without remorse, without blushing. Republicans, this is the man you voted in, who is willing to uproot people from their homes and move them to, I don't know, Egypt or wherever. And then Trump, the stupid dictator, fascist, racist man, says we're going to make Gaza into like some golf course resort area. The selfishness, the conceit, no idea about foreign policy to propose such a thing. Republicans, you voted for this. How would you like it if some crazy man representing the most powerful nation in the world just said you need to leave where you were raised and born? You need to go. But this is who Donald Trump is.